Well, welcome to today's webinar. Very glad you could join us. My name is Mike Roberts, and I'm a Vice President here at Aptris. On today's webinar, we're going to be showing you a demo of software asset management from ServiceNow. With SAM, you can maximize IT software investments easily and take control of your assets with one dashboard. So first up, you're going to hear from Marcus Hartness. You see his picture on the screen here. Marcus is an advisory solutions consultant with ServiceNow, and he has service management and infrastructure experience in consulting, engineering, and infrastructure architecture design. So he's going to be telling you a little bit about SAM and all the things it can do for your organization. And then he'll pass the mic over to Kelly Hopner. You see her on the screen here too. Kelly is a senior solution consultant with Aptris, and she has served as a primary ServiceNow resource for many development projects. She's also a ServiceNow, an authorized ServiceNow trainer, and she's going to be presenting the demo, and that's going to be followed by a Q&A session. So just a quick note on that, everyone will remain muted throughout the duration of the webinar, so if you have any questions that you'd like addressed during the Q&A, please feel free to put them in the chat window and we will get to them. We will be monitoring it, so if you have something maybe that should be addressed right away, we'll certainly try to jump in there and take care of it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marcus. Marcus, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. We can go ahead and record this, and at the end, we'll make sure we send this out to everybody as well. So my name is Marcus Hartness. I'm a ServiceNow solution consultant, and I've been with the company for about 18 months or so, and do have some service management experience. And I'm going to take you through the power of software asset management. And like Mike said, I will be passing it over to Kelly to actually do the demonstration. So I know we have a mixed audience out there. Some will have a lot of service management background, some may be in operations, some might be in finance, some might be in the compliance department. So I think it's worth our time to just talk through what exactly is software asset management, how is it similar to some things that you guys are experiencing today, and we'll kind of walk through the slides. So what exactly is software asset management? So it is similar to what you're probably familiar with from an asset management or even hardware asset management perspective. And we just seek out to claim, do that life cycle process, just as you would within your hardware aspects, right? I think IT has done a really good job to put a framework around the things like ITIL processes, ITSM processes, to really understand the hardware asset lifecycle management. But there is still a gap that's fundamentally being raised around software. And as software becomes an increasing component of IT spend, we wanted to seek out to address that type of thing. So as you can see in the slide, anything from request to procurement to fulfillment to retirement, we wanted to actually put a process, a methodology around how we actually go to market with software asset management and making sure that we capture all that. And really, we sought out to answer three main questions. What software do you own? Are you buying what you need? Are you, owning too much of what you don't need? Are you using what you have? And I think the thing that I typically, when I have these conversations, is not just what software do you own? Are you buying what you need? Are you using what you have? The thing I would put in quotation marks around here is, can you do all three of those aspects in confidence, with confidence? I think a lot of folks have some methodology in place right now, but it maybe is unreliable. Maybe they don't have the visibility into certain aspects of it. So how do we make sure that we capture these types of questions with confidence, and we can be secured around that? So why is this important? I think we all face this. I think probably one of the overarching themes that we see in this space is there's a governance, there's a compliance, there's a risk to, making sure that your software assets are actually being captured very well. And it's all related to software assets, or excuse me, audits. And it is a question of, if you guys haven't experienced it already, it's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. So it's just something to be considered, taken consideration. So just a couple of thoughts that come to mind here are just think about a situation that might happen in your own environment. Like maybe you're trying to offset the challenges of buying software or getting hit with a software audit. So you go out and buy extra maybe database licenses or something along those lines. So you're buying more software than you actually need. And then what ends up happening is, what happens in the case of you finally do get an audit, and you realize that, well, it wasn't the database license that you actually needed to protect yourself from, but maybe some business intelligence license that sits on top of SQL that you need to license, right? And next thing you know, you're hit with a fine because you're out of compliance. You actually have, you not only that, you've overspent the initial license of the database license in the first place, and then you have to go out and buy the correct licenses after the fact anyway. So you get hit multiple ways, and it's just something that you just don't have a good risk posture around. So that's something to be taken into consideration as you actually, secure yourself against these potential software audits. So because of this, Gartner actually puts out a simplified way of understanding what savings you can actually drive from having a software asset management initiative. Now, we here, obviously, at ServiceNow, think we provide one of the best ways and the best solutions around that and a holistic approach to actually doing that. But in a nutshell, Gartner says that you can drive 1 million per 1 billion in savings. So if you actually if you're a company that actually has roughly $1 billion in revenue today, they estimate that you can actually save $1 million in your first year of savings, right? And then 5% on top of that. Well, in CIO.com, we actually pulled this down as well. And a lot of that is due to things like shelfware. So how do we actually see and utilize the assets that are actually sitting on the shelf and not being implemented today? And CIO.com is shown a study where $30 billion of software is wasted in the United States on an annual basis. So you can feel free to pull those down. Again, we'll share this deck to actually do that. But as you guys start to build that business case back to the business, this is some ammo that you guys have and some data points that are truly pulled from industry. So if you think about, revenue that you guys pull in today, even if these numbers, if we just take a conservative number, we can actually start to provide some really big savings. Matter of fact, before I actually touch on the slide, there's one customer that is a ServiceNow referenceable customer, Community Health Systems. They actually had manual tasks associated with the way how they actually were doing their audits and trying to capture their software spend and software licenses. We were actually able to reduce and automate 95% of their software assets that they had in-house, which actually led to a 40% reduction in their true-up costs. So think about that as you actually have, existing, EA licenses that are out there, et cetera. So what exactly are we out to address? What are the pain points and what are the solutions that ServiceNow are seeking to answer and resolve? So as we kind of build this slide out, think about life cycle events that actually take place in your organization today that actually pose different risk and different pain points that actually happen. You guys are probably very familiar and experienced these types of things, but as we look to simplify and provide a solution that can address those things, think about things like, the onboarding and offboarding process, right? What happens when someone gets a promotion and they no longer need a developer license, as an example, right? Or what happens from an organizational standpoint when you go through a merger or acquisition? What type of risk does that pose? So starting at the top here, things like audit and risk and unexpected costs. You're having to go out and buy licenses because you do not understand the license that you have in your environment. Well, we actually provide a compliance position through different content packs and publishing packs where we can provide you dashboards that actually can go out and understand what type of licenses you have and your compliance posture around that. Things around underutilized capacity, right? If you have things like shelfware, maybe you have a situation where someone is offboarded from your organization, but you didn't offboard the licensing right there, right? So now you're having to go out and procure more licenses as, or hold on to licenses that may not necessarily be needed in your environment. So how do we leverage our native built-in workflow that comes as a platform capability specific to reclaiming that software assets, right? So things like that. Also tying into the capabilities around our platform. This is probably one of our biggest value add is what happens if you need to set in change approvals or go into change management, or you want to get to the ultimate place where you can actually hosted out on a service portal where people can actually make requests to actually get licenses in the first place, right? So you want to be able to tie into that platform capability, and we actually provide that baseline as a purchase of ServiceNow. So think about these things as you go through it. Like a real life scenario would be something around, how do we get to a place where we can discover the content that's out there, making sure that it ties into our operations side of the house, and we get those different types of modules that are associated with the software asset. How do we tie those into providing a value back to the business and showing service mapping, right? Things like that, where we actually can pull in, not only the infrastructure components tied to the software and also the applications that serve our business, that we actually can provide that value. And all that can be tied in just because this is all a platform position. So it gets away from the point tools where we actually have to integrate that. I can think of several customers that have to, in the example of change, where we have to take information that we pulled in from these manual spreadsheets and embed them or integrate them into our change management platform. That can get cumbersome, and then it goes back to the trifecta of going back to the risk compliance, right? You get the governance around there, and what does that mean from a risk standpoint? So just keep in mind as we actually kind of go through this maturity model of how ServiceNow can actually alleviate those types of issues. So I kind of jumped ahead here. I just want to point out a couple of things here. We don't have to go through, for the sake of time, go through each one of these boxes, but what does it look like from ServiceNow and what we actually accomplish, right? So starting in the left corner, we actually go through the process of discovering those assets, right? We go out into the network and discover what assets that you have available, either through a delivery service that you have today through client distribution with SCCM, or you can use our native discovering tool to go out and find those different assets and devices. And we actually use normalization and reconciliation in conjunction. So think about today, right? Maybe you're doing it manually. Maybe you have a little bit of automation capabilities built around it. But let's say you have, a endpoint or end device that has Windows 10. Well, in native tongue, when we're talking from person to person, we know that this license has a Windows 10. But sometimes when we pull the information in, different devices might have a Windows 10.1.4.10 or what have you, right? Some iteration of Windows 10. So when you populate a database or information, it'll pull that information, and it might not be able to tell the difference between that Windows 10 device that has that, the suffix at the end versus another Windows 10 device that has a different suffix. Well, we do that reconciliation and normalization to say, hey, at the end of it, you have 1,000 Windows 10 devices, right? And we do the same thing for Adobe and a bunch of different other products. So it does really reduce the amount of noise that comes in, so you can see exactly how many Windows licenses you have of that particular kind. And then probably one of the most important features is that reclamation, right? We actually pull in and pull back that information, that software asset, so we don't have to have multiple, softwares that we're trying to accomplish for one particular individual. So in a real world example, here's what I would view as phase one of Nirvana, right? As you get to the approach of self-service and things like that, you actually have a request management, self-service catalog, where an individual can actually go and say, hey, I need to get an Adobe license, maybe some Photoshop licensing, right? And then it goes through the appropriate orchestration through approvals, and it actually taps into the database to see, do you actually have this license available first? Okay, great. If it does, then it can utilize the client software distribution model to actually go ahead and, assuming the approvals are in place, to go ahead and assign the license rights to that particular individual. So it reduces the processing, the manual part, or even going through the procurement process to ensure that you get the license to pay for that individual's usage. And reclaiming, right? So let's just say, think about, maybe developers, right, that go out and spin up an instance or a VM that has certain licenses that are tied to it. Maybe those licenses get spun up, software usage can meter it, and you can dictate, okay, when this software usage or this VM or however you want to define it is not being used for more than 10 days, 30 days, 60 days or what have you, put in a reclamation rule to pull that software down so you can later on reallocate those licenses at another time. So you can orchestrate that event so it won't be something where you get the problem of having shelfware. So these are just a couple examples that you guys can take away right now to utilize in your environment to actually maximize the investments that you're already making within those software licenses. And with that being said, lastly, I just want to leave this with you guys. Budgets are being constrained. I think the reality is that IT's budget is shrinking. So how can we maximize that? And I would just contest that utilizing a SAM initiative or software asset management initiative can fuel and fund the different projects that you would have in place because of its quick ROI, because of its ability to provide value immediately back to the business and save those 40% over true-up costs and things like that. Not only that, it provides some visibility and context back to the business to make sure that your risk posture and things like that are in a place where you can be relied on that data. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Kelly to actually run through some of the demonstrations so she can provide some of those aspects where you can realize some of that those hard dollar savings. So Kelly, I'll go ahead and let you take it away.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. There we go. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just walk through a few of the things in software asset management application in ServiceNow. It is a very large application. It does a lot of different things. I'm going to focus on Microsoft. One of the things that Marcus mentioned was the publisher packs that you can get. Those contain specific metrics for reconciling your licenses. Microsoft has their own, Oracle, IBM, VMware, Citrix, SAP, and there's others that have their own as well. Also with your publisher packs, you get these dashboards that you're seeing right now on my screen. The one we're going to focus on right now is Microsoft. These are typically working dashboards. So not only do I get to see the numbers pretty laid out for me, know where I'm at a glance, I can also work from them. I can drill down into what's behind these numbers and actually work from it. On your screen right now, you're seeing this is the Software Publisher Analytics. This is part of the publisher packs. We're going to focus on Microsoft for this demonstration. What we're seeing on the screen right now is Microsoft. In the left side, we see the products out of compliance. We have 5 products out of compliance. We see total true-up costs. These costs are based on what's in your environment right now that need to be trued up, and what that cost is going to look like based on data that you've collected and tracked. Over licensed amount. These are licenses that you own that you're not using within your environment. So that's your over licensed amount. Reclamations requiring attention. Marcus mentioned the capability of reclaiming software that's not being used. This would equal what needs some attention. I need to go pay attention to it, do something with it. There's nothing right now. Potential savings, $29,000. This $29,000 is based on the potential of reclaiming software that's not being utilized, that's installed in your environment. And then actual savings year to date, that's tracking everything that we have reused or reclaimed and made it available to reuse first and having to purchase software. So those are the types of things that we can take a look at and work from as we're working using our software asset management application. I'm going to go ahead and click into the products out of compliance, because compliance is a very important place that we need to be with software asset management. Like Marcus had mentioned, the audits and understanding what we have in our environment. As I click into my Microsoft products out of compliance, it gives me a list from of all the products that are currently out of compliance with my Microsoft. So it's not giving me everything I have inside my environment. It's giving me an overall list of just what's out of compliance so that I can work this list. We're going to focus on project here. So I'm going to expand this out for you. and we're going to take a look at it. You'll see here that I have 2013 standard windows, okay? And it's giving us some information, total spend, true up cost, over licensed amount, agreement type. I don't have any information here, but what I'm going to really focus on is my 2016 professional windows, okay? So here on our screen, we see our total spend in our environments, 118,000. Approximately our true up cost, our over licensed amount, and what type of agreement we're tracking to. All right, we also see our license metric results. It's going to load there for you. And our remediation options and our unlicensed installs, removal candidates, and any outstanding purchase orders. ServiceNow ties to many applications, like Marcus had mentioned. We can leverage other things within ServiceNow, procurement being one of them. Catalog request, the client software distribution. There's many aspects of ServiceNow that we can leverage throughout this process. We do not have to leverage them all, and we can phase through that, but definitely there for that nirvana that we're working towards, right? So when I click on this, it shows I have this, gives me my license metric results, where I'm at for my license per device, right? These are a per device type of license. I have 100 rights owned, but I'm consuming 135 rights. So this really quickly, I can say, hey, you know what? I've got 135 out there that I'm consuming, I'm utilizing, but I only own 100. So what am I going to do with that? If I expand this out even more, I can click on my per device. And what this is going to do, it's going to, like, as a software asset manager, I'm going to be able to come in really quickly and go, okay, we own 100, we're using 100. We have this other amount that is being used that we need to do something with. And I can look through my data quickly and understand where it's installed, what they're consuming, and how they're consuming that information. So we'll just scroll down here. So it actually returns back all the information of where this is all installed. Okay, rights used by, what it's being used by. This is a device metric, so we're looking at it per devices. This one's using 2 rights, and it's also has none allocated in use, but it does not allocated in use. So these aren't actually allocated to the devices. And ServiceNow gives us that capability to allocate it. Allocated not in use, and then allocations needed. So as we look at these, we can start to see what is going on with our per devices. Installs used, we also get this, and then it gives us all that different information, what's installed, who's using it, installed on, who's it assigned to. You know, as an allocation needed, allocations are not needed unless it is a per named device type license. It is a nice thing to do, is to allocate to the device as you purchase it for the device, but it's not actually required. It is a good practice though. Is allocated, false as well, because this isn't allocated. So we're seeing that. I also have the ability to have upgrades and downgrades. So I can see that I have some upgrade downgrade capabilities here as well. And I can track that. I'm going to go back up to the overall 2016 professional windows for a project. And what I'm going to see here is I also have remediation options. So from this perspective, I can come in and take a look at what my remediation actions are that I can do to remediate my non-compliance, okay? So the first thing it's telling me is that I can purchase rights per device. There's 35 that I need to purchase, and it's going to tell me what that cost is, all right? So cost is always a factor. I haven't had an audit yet. We have 35 devices installed, extra than what we own. I may not want to just dig right in and purchase. Would I want to remove uninstalled? Not necessarily. I have this 35 that it's counting that, maybe the folks are using it. So maybe I don't want to uninstall it. So there's different things you have to take into consideration. But as you notice across here, I also have removal candidates. And that removal candidates is driven based off of that reclamation rules that were created. So what I'm going to be able to see when I go into the outstanding removal candidates that haven't had the software removed yet, that those are the users that are possibly not using the software where it's installed on the devices. So those would be my first choice. I would remove those to reclaim some licenses. And sorry, my demo instance is being slow right now. Not a typical ServiceNow thing, but it never fails. You're doing a demo and demo instance slows down a little bit. My apologies. See there. All right, get over my removal candidates. This is going to show us, based on those reclamation rules that Marcus had mentioned, that we have low usage. So we may want to go ahead and just push these through, get these reclaimed. So then ultimately we only have 15 unlicensed installs, and maybe we want to go ahead and purchase those, right? Or dig down into if those folks need it or not. Did we purchase it for them, and that type of thing. So really, what this is doing from this overall look and drilling down into what you have out here is giving you the ability to make a logical decision about what is in your environment, based on the metering data that we are getting in, for instance, from SCCM. Who should I uninstall from first, right? Or who should I purchase software for? Ultimately, looking at this and looking at the overall results that ServiceNow is providing you, I wouldn't recommend, and most, CIOs or whoever is in charge of the budget wouldn't want to randomly go buy 35 licenses when we have 20 folks here not using the software. So there's the value in that. We're gonna generate savings based on reclaiming software that's not being used and then only purchasing the software that needs to be purchased. Okay. So that's one of the things we can do. So I can go ahead and I can look at these reclamation candidates. The reclamation candidates goes through the workflow and it uninstalls from the device using that client software distribution, the orchestration integrated with SCCM or whatever your tool is, and then it'll uninstall. So we can uninstall these 20 and then I can maybe just go buy 15 licenses. So if I come back over to my remediation options, again, it's giving me those options. I could say, hey, we don't have budget. I'm going to uninstall these 35, and I could click on remove the unlicensed and quickly create all removal candidates. It will create those reclamation removal candidate records so that it will go out and CSD will remove from all 35 of these. My risk here is that if I just do this without looking and validating these folks need it or not, I could be removing software that they need. So we may want to, be a little bit cautious there, but it does give us that information and that we can quickly do it, right? Here's hardware needed. This computer is print anywhere. I really need Project 2016 Professional Windows on print anywhere, right? So maybe I could just do it for this one. I could choose the ones that I want to do the reclamation on, okay? So that's one of my options that I have. I also have, it's going to be slow for me because I'm flipping back and forth. I'll pause here for a second while that reloads. I also have those options to create a purchase order. That option is available when I have procurement installed inside my ServiceNow instance. If I don't have ServiceNow procurement installed in my instance, there are other capabilities. It's going to tell me I still need to purchase it. I won't be able to create a purchase order from the record unless I build that out, so it wouldn't be baseline functionality. There we go. Back to my remediation options. So I can also create allocations. Currently, I'm not allocating to any device, so the ones that I do have the 100 licenses for, I can create the allocations. I can go ahead and grandfather those in. If I didn't track allocations as we were going and as we were starting, it gives me that option to just create the allocations. It's going to take this first 100 devices and it's going to allocate the entitlement to them so that it's quickly and easily allocated. And then, of course, remove unallocated installs. That's all 100 because we don't have anything that is allocated. So I can also click in here to this purchase rights as a, if we have that procurement, I can create a purchase order. Just by clicking on this, I can create a purchase order. I can, say who it's going to ship to. software. Typically doesn't ship, but we still need it. And go ahead and it'll create it for the software that we need. And, you know, tells me it was created successfully, so I'm just going to X out this. Now that is created successfully. After I purchased that, I received those entitlements in and assign them to these licenses. This will no longer be not compliant. Okay, so that is the way, that is how we can go about getting to a quick compliance position. The ability of what we see here, what our software asset managers are able to do quickly. Everything I just showed you here is baseline functionality, how ServiceNow works out of the box once we get our data in there. And then we can take a look at how things are there and how they work. If you currently have an environment where things are in spreadsheets or in SharePoint or even other tools where this data isn't quickly available, you wouldn't really know from clicking on, you would know you were out of compliance. I have 135 installed. I only own 100 licenses, but you wouldn't have the ability to quickly see how many of those were not being used. It would be a manual effort by a software asset manager to go through and identify who really needed the software, or some companies would just go, you know what, let's spend the $41,000 and buy it. So really what you're able to gain is, I'm not spending funds that I don't need to. I'm also reclaiming the software that isn't being used so that I can use it, and there's a cost savings around that. Not only the cost savings of the software, but you're also saving a lot of labor effort. I literally just showed you that in about 10 minutes. A software asset manager, once they have all their data in there, can go through the remediation processes that quickly and determine if they want to reclaim software, allocate software, remove software, or purchase it based on where they're at. Another thing that is common in our environments is we also have, take a look down here. One other thing that's common is we may have multiple types of entitlements that we've purchased, but you will sometimes see that the wrong thing is installed in your environment, right? So things can get installed incorrectly. We can quickly see that I have, in this, when I look at my Office 365 2016, I have 751 unlicensed installs, right? I have user subscriptions for E3 and E5 Enterprise, and they're compliant because I may have more licenses there. What happens often is I can look at Office 365 and go, oh my gosh, we have this particular model that's out of compliance, but these are not. And what it's able to quickly tell me is that I've purchased one type of entitlement, but my distribution of the software or the install by the technicians or the download by the user ultimately ended up getting the wrong model installed. So I am easily able to see that information. Okay, so this is a very nice workable situation day to day to be able to get in our data, work through it, get to our compliance position, reclaim software, have some financial savings, as well as not have exhaustive labor efforts to do it. Now there is some, build up, getting the data in there, getting it all started. But once you do that, that day-to-day work becomes less and less over time. We also have ImageRed. This was new ImageRed. We have a license workbench so that I can quickly and easily jump in and see what publishers that I have that are out of compliance. And you see when I go to my license workbench here, I have 2 publishers in compliance. That's the only 2 I have in compliance. Otherwise, I need to work on my non-compliance publishers, right? So my Microsoft we already looked at. It gives you an overview. If I look up here at my Adobe, I have $525 of true-up costs. I have $108,639 of over-licensed amount, and then I have $24,000 worth of potential savings. So if I click into my Adobe products, just like the software that Microsoft Office that we looked at, I can start working through what's compliant and what's not compliant. Okay, so in this environment, I have my Acrobat, I have my 9.0 professional that's compliant, but my DC professional is not. Okay, so this is giving me everything that's compliant and not compliant to show that overall not compliant. Maybe I own some extra licenses in 9.0, but not DC, and I should uninstall versus, going out and purchasing. So it gives us visibility into those individual products based on your publishers. So there's a lot of drill down capabilities, allows you to make really good, smart decisions without a lot of effort. So that's the license workbench capability that we have. We also have the license position report, which quickly gives us an overall view of what's compliant and what's not compliant. So I can come in here, I can take a look quickly at my license position report. I can see all my software models that I have in my environment, and I can quickly see what's compliant and not compliant as I'm working through my individual day-to-day, getting to my compliance position. So we have all this visibility of different things that we can see, working dashboards, drilling into it, and that type of thing. Just going to mention one last thing, from the capabilities that ServiceNow is providing for us as we start to use software asset management in our environment. We have this ability when we discover software in our environments, whether it's through SCCM Discovery or another tool, those tools see the software installed at whatever patch level it's installed on the device. And we don't necessarily purchase software at a patch level. So what ServiceNow has done is they're providing a service to anyone that's using Software Asset Management Professional to do data normalization, to normalize your software models so that they are being normalized to the software the way you're purchasing it. I'll give you an example. I'm going to click into my discovery models. This is how ServiceNow see, how the data is coming in as it's being discovered. You'll see I have some here that we'll focus on the ones that are normalized. Not everything is normalized. When the product ships, there's about 7,000 to 8,000 products in your normalization. After normalization, scheduled jobs run on a weekly basis, it comes up to around 1 million products in here to normalize for you, which all of your big products are getting normalized. So what you're seeing with normalization is in this display name, we'll start looking at the Splunk one here for you. You see that it's Splunk Enterprise 6.2.0.237341, right? I may also have a Splunk Enterprise 6.2.0.37124. That is not uncommon as software is getting installed. However, when I purchase the license, I'm only purchasing 6.2. So I tie my entitlement to Splunk's Enterprise 6.2 software model. What ServiceNow is providing me is it's taking all of these that are with those dot patch levels and it's normalizing it to this software model for me without me having to go out and manually do this. This is a huge effort that folks used to have to do manually. With the normalization engine, it's doing it for you, and ServiceNow is constantly providing you updates. Okay, so it really streamlines. The big publishers, your IBM, Microsoft, Oracle, VMware, those are pretty much going to be here. And as time goes by and ServiceNow continues to update, other publishers' products will get added in. We've got Splunk Enterprise here, right? So we can see that they're continuing to add publishers in here, Mozilla, Oracle. So this is just an example of what those look like, okay? All right, well, that concludes my demo for the day. I'm just gonna go ahead and stop sharing. We'll take a look at the questions. I'll let Marcus pick up there and see if we wanna review anything. And if anybody has any other questions, that would be, please feel free.
Yeah, so I had a couple questions fielded in the chat and Q&A. So let's just double click on the reasons for discovery versus using client distribution model. Really, in a nutshell, folks, you're going to utilize those in conjunction, right? So SCCM is great at doing things like install, uninstall, capturing the data that's actually on end user devices, laptops, desktops, things of that nature. But you also can use ServiceNow's discovery tool. As a matter of fact, we do typically encourage it, because if you think from a platform capability, we talked about things like integrating into a change management application, integrating into understanding what's going on ops. We're going to capture all that data center information agentlessly. So we're going to grab that data, we're going to be able to populate it and provide things like, if you talk about maturity model, a service map, which actually is going to show how the infrastructure components from a hardware aspect, the software that's laid on top of it, align to an application that's used by a line of business. So we're going to be able to provide all that data center information and provide it back up to the business to provide them value on the data that's underlying in their infrastructure. Because folks, let's be honest. If I am a application owner or maybe in a particular business unit, I don't particularly care that I have an Exchange cluster. What I care is that my application called Exchange is working so I can do my email, right? So it provides that business context, and discovery is the front-ended way to pull that information so we can start to begin to populate the database in a way that's going to provide them that value. And furthermore, we utilize things like a client distribution system or application to do the things around reclamation. So we'll go ahead and tell SCCM, say, okay, we don't need that license to be on that end device. Can you uninstall that for us? So we do utilize that in conjunction, definitely. Good question, though. Looks like... so another question came in around devices that exist in cloud, so Office 365. So yes, we do have licensing, and we can pull some of those types of metering data for cloud-based products. Office 365 being the most notable one. The question then becomes, what about futuristic type applications and software devices, right? So the next iteration, our next release will be New York, where we're going to plan to add other applications as well. So think about Box. So if you have a documentum system that's cloud-based, Dropbox and Box will be included in the next release. Like if you're using Salesforce right now, their Sales Cloud, we can pull in some of that data to make sure that you're licensed correctly for that. Matter of fact, the webinar that we're using today, Zoom meeting, I know those licenses can get expensive. We're actually going to pull down those license data as well to ensure that you are licensed correctly for that. Let me just scroll the chat real quick to see if there are any other questions. Questions around integrations. So things like, you might want to integrate to your own procurement system, or maybe some type of other back-ended process, right? So if you've seen the value and say, hey, that's great that we can actually, to request to fulfill if we don't have the licensing and we need to go tie into our procurement system. As a general rule, ServiceNow works by a RESTful API. So if you have a gentleman online actually pulled in a question around their particular procurement system that they have in-house, we can integrate with that from a context of, yes, we can send communications bidirectionally. So the question then becomes, and this is something we'll ask, Aptris and other third-party implementers to say, hey, leverage your experience on what type of data is needed for us to gather. So do we want contact data? Is that important to you, Mr. or Mrs. Customer? Do we want financial data? That might be important to pull into ServiceNow. So we can pull that information most definitely to start then understanding the full aspects of the lifecycle management, not just from a true do you have it or do you not have it, but understand from, okay, this is the potential implication, cost, financial-wise, to making sure that we need to go procure, or making sure that we need to ensure that we don't have it installed on devices that do not need it, right? Because the reality is Microsoft, they're going to give you a report and they're going to tell you how much their data costs. But it'd be nice to know exactly how much you guys pay from your own procurement system. So great questions, folks. If you guys have any more, feel free to keep it coming in.
Looks like there's a question, Marcus, around normalization. Did you get to that one?
I don't believe so. There's a couple questions in here I did not see.
So normalization is automatic with it'll normalize data with that central software library that ServiceNow provides, and then the software that isn't normalized by the central the discovery models that are not normalized by the central software library service that comes in, it's a weekly scheduled job that populates the data inside of ServiceNow. You can manually normalize those models if those are important models for you to target. And then as ServiceNow continues to work through, when they normalize that data in the future, it will give you a normalization suggestion to match what ServiceNow has normalized it to if you've manually normalized it. So it'll automatically normalize if it's available, and then you can manually normalize the items that are not normalized if you want to. Someone else also asked about Coupa specifically, and yes, like Marcus had said, we can integrate with a lot of other systems. I personally have done an integration with Coupa, not for software asset management, but for hardware. So the capability is definitely there. It would be a customization, but it's definitely something I would recommend doing if you have a purchasing system outside of ServiceNow to go ahead and build that integration as well. Anything?
Yeah, great questions.
So,
Marcus, do you want to put your intro slide back up right before we get to the ending here, just for contact info? And I'll let you guys finish
Definitely.
up your answers here, and then I'll wrap us up.
Sunny, yes, you know, you can turn it on in all instances. You definitely want it running in prod because that's your data that you're tracking your licenses to. You can turn it on and have it syncing in your dev and test instance. Maybe in the beginning if you're bringing all your discovery and your software models there. But if you're working day-to-day license management, ongoing things being installed, you definitely would want that turned on in your prod instance to be able to do that reconciliation.
Yeah, we had another question come in with the Ariba system specifically for procurement. I haven't had experience. I don't know if you have, Kelly, but you know, we'll take our general stance. Like I said before, we work by RESTful API. So again, it just comes down to what type of content you would actually want to pull into ServiceNow. But the general consensus is yes, as long as we can work with their API and we use RESTful API, we're good.
And yes, I've seen integration with Ariba as well. So it's not uncommon from a hardware or software asset management process to integrate with another procurement tool.
Okay, so we have about maybe 5-10 minutes left before we adjourn for today. If there are any questions, feel free to keep it coming. I don't know if you see any more, Kelly, but I don't see any more.
I do not. It has been a good day.
Yeah, I think they're wrapped up, and we certainly don't mind giving you some time back. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. If you want to know more, if you come up with more questions, absolutely reach out to your Aptris, ServiceNow, or CDW rep. Kelly and Marcus are kind enough to share their contact information. It's on the screen right here. You can reach out to them as well. And as Marcus mentioned at the beginning, you'll be receiving a link to the webinar. The contact information will be in there as well. So we're certainly happy to continue to dialogue with you. And we will be doing a repeat of this webinar in August. You can check our events calendar there for the registration link, and it will be the same webinar, but again, for people who couldn't make this one, there's a lot who registered for that, but just another chance to ask, you know, live questions and get some answers right then and there. And with that, again, we really appreciate your time today and hanging in there with us. Have a fantastic day. Thank you.